Okay, I think that hopefully worked. And we're now seeing, we are, hooray! Sorry about that. This is our first time using YouTube Live instead of using just a Zoom meeting because people said this would be easier. But getting OBS to talk to YouTube, especially since they just released the new dashboard, has been interesting. But welcome. If this is the first time you are joining us for our walkthrough, today we're going to talk about building CRUD applications in Dark. I always like to do, I think with CRUD applications is actually super easy. We can just start straight from setting up the data store and then go from there. So if you are completely new to Dark, everything is all here in the browser. This is the canvas. On the left-hand side, you see all of the major components that you would need to make a backend. For CRUD applications, we'll be focusing on two in particular. We will be setting up a data store, since it's where our data will live that we're updating, and then we'll be making a series of HTTP endpoints to work with that, so we'll be able to access our API externally. The other things in here you might want to use, depending if you're building a different type of application, background workers for anything you don't want to be doing over HTTP, and sometimes making other API calls that take longer, cron for when you want to schedule something to happen specifically, like you wanted to send reports from your CRUD application, for instance. There's a getting started tutorial that can show you how to do that. We'll probably actually use REPLs. These are just tools that you can use yourself to write code to work within your application. And then functions, sometimes people think these are serverless functions, but they're the classic type of functions that you would use in Python or JavaScript or anything else. So let's get started. I'm going to make the data store first. You can create new things either from this box, the Omni box, which you can get to from Command K, or clicking anywhere on the canvas, or from these plus buttons on the sidebar. I tend to prefer to use the Omni box for the being able to use Command K and just use my hands on the keyboard all the time. Let's see, what do we want to make let's just make a blog. That's a pretty classic one. So we're going to make a new DB for blog posts. And now we set up the schema. And so in this case, actually make a REPL so you can see this side by side. In Dark, our data stores are all key value based, and so they're non-relational. So you wouldn't think of this as setting up a bunch of tables that refer to each other. You can refer to other tables, but deletes won't cascade through that, and you have to be a little bit conscious of how you're doing it. So for the most part, you should think about this as a key value store. What that actually looks like, if I'm running a dbset function to put something into this data store, is you'll have a value, which is a record, which basically you have a set of key value pairs, and then you have a key that is around them, and then you have the data store that you're using, so we'll do that. You'll also note, since I just did this one, as you build around your data store with your API, you'll be able to see the architecture of what is connected to each other. So here, now that we have a data store function that's going to talk to the blog post data store, we can see that connection. If they're further apart, we can jump between them. Oh no, there's an echo. I don't know why there's an echo because I'm wearing headphones. Let's see if that gets a little bit better, but feel free to tell me if it doesn't. Come in here and see the chat. It's not. Here's go. I'm going to grab the headphones. I also see the advice that turning down the system volume of OBS. Does that help? I think it does. Yes. Yay. All right, back to making CRUD apps, and I figured out how to pop out the chat so I won't hear myself. Okay. I know many of you have been here before, so I won't run through the entire giant thing again, but all the things I did when you couldn't hear me because of the echo was we created this data store, which we have titled blog posts, and we created a REPL, which has been default named Yapping Orangutan. I like that one. And I just showed that the data store here, you can see the connection between the REPL and the data store as it's available. And so now let's give our blog post some information. The reason I went down this is just to point out data stores will have the key that is nested around them. So there's no necessary reason to like say have like an ID field or something like that because the key serves that purpose. So in this case, let's give our blog posts titles and then let's give them bodies and then we can give them tags, which would be a list of strings. Oh, and authors would probably be good. Cool. And so you can see this is all we need to have this data store. And then if we actually want to be able to start working with the data store we have, we can just say, put one into it. So we'll give it a title, Making CRUD Apps in Dark. And we'll give it a body, which you can see a video on YouTube. Link. And we'll give it tags, walkthrough, demo, CRUD, backend. I don't know, seems fine. We'll give it an author, which in this case will be Ellen. And then we can see here we have this key field. And so in this case, I think what I want to do is I probably want to have a slug related to the title. So I'm going to extract this as variable. And then I'm going to make a slug equal title slugify, string slugify. There we go. And so then we'll do that. And so far, that's all we have. This is going to be pretty much the same code that we will write for our ability to add something to our data store. This one just only can run internally from the application rather than being able to access it externally. So one thing if you haven't used Dark before, you probably haven't seen is that when you have functions that have side effects in your code, they have these green play buttons. So when I run this db set operation, I'm actually able to just from within my application, run it and put more stuff into my data store. So we do that. And you can see as soon as I've done that, my data store is locked and I actually have this. And now if I want to start to build out the functionality, say around this, make a new HTTP handler, posts all, and then I can do a db get all. I'll do get all with keys so you can see that. And then blog posts. And so I can, again, you can see I have this play button here. I can either choose to run this and just look at it, but I can also open this in a new tab and you can see I have my nested blog entry of the blog entry identified as Making CRUD Apps in Dark has this record associated with it. And then I can pass this to my front end however I want to. Okay, so that's one. And so then what I can do next is I can make one that just gets these individually. I guess I didn't stop to say this, but the whole half the point probably of using Dark is that as soon as I have this endpoint, it's already up and it's here and we're already seeing it. And all of you could go here if you wanted to. You can't necessarily add more fake blog posts yet since we haven't exposed a route to do that, but you can all look at this and this is already live. Similarly, if we come back over here, if any of you did choose to look at it, I would be able to see because we can see this real incoming trace data from having just opened this. This will get a lot more interesting when we have a post endpoint or a put or a patch. And so more traditionally, we would want to do a get post, and then we would want to do it by the slug. And now we would be able to display that dynamically. So in this case, we want to use db get. Getting familiar with the data store functions would be really helpful for making a CRUD application in particular. But if I open a new REPL, you get them all by typing db. If you're curious about the fact that I call them data stores all of the time, but they're prefixed with db, it's because everyone finds them in the autocomplete using db, but There was a lot of debate, especially early on, about if people should think of them as tables or as or as databases. And so it's kind of the halfway point. We call them data stores, but use DB. So you can see there's a big set of them. Most of the time for CRUD applications, obviously, we just use a get all. Get is how you can look by unique value. So in this case, this would be our slug. So this is what we're going to use for getting each post individually. Generate key is what you could use if you don't have a unique identifier that you want to use. I would not recommend using this for CRUD apps for basically what I just said. Is you're probably going to want to use a get to be able to get specific objects back out. And if you have generate key, you're going to have to like store all these UUIDs and there won't be a logical thing to be looking for. A couple distinctions in these libraries. Get generally refers to getting everything or getting by key, whereas query tends to refer to getting something that is part of the record. So if I wanted to say, get all of the posts that follow a specific tag, for instance, query would be the right call. So let's do this, db get by slug. And you can see that our variable here that will change based on what we're calling is already there, and then blog posts. Okay, and so now what we can do is if we know the slug of a blog post, we can easily go to it. So our slug before was making CRUD apps in dark. Another thing that's kind of handy about this is using your live values to actually copy out strings so you don't have to rewrite them. I do this a fair amount for getting URLs too. So now if we go to /post/ not the quotes, there you go. Now we have something working where we can get back the data for a specific blog post. I'm just gonna pop over to YouTube and see if any questions. I don't know. Nope, we're just very happy about the sound. I'm also very happy about the sound. Cool. Okay. So now that we have the ability to get a post out, let's make the ability to make a new post. So we will post /post. And then, I guess we already basically did this. We will want this logic, but we'll want to get it. Now we'll just rewrite it. Okay. So what we're going to do here, we're going to be posting to our blog post data store, and we will get the key. We will write the logic to get the slug based on what comes in. And many of you have seen this before, but one of the ways it's easier to build things up is by using trace-driven development, which is, you can see them over here. Someone besides me, someone just opened our posts all endpoint less than a minute ago. Someone else opened it 1 minute ago. We can do the same thing with our post endpoint and then work with that real data. So in this menu up here for posts, rather than open in browser, since this doesn't really make sense, we can copy as curl and then put in data that we want to be able to work with. So I have my terminal over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the data that I want to put in. It's going to be a test of me remembering. I hope that's right. Author, also still all in. Yep, cool. So you can see, oh, actually I should show you. You can see here how I curled, and then I got back this application error because my code is not complete. This completely makes sense because there are tons of red underlines here and nothing is complete. One thing that sometimes is not helpful or is helpful is if you have the bottom value, it doesn't just show you the live value of the current expression, it actually shows you what that endpoint is going to return. If you haven't come from a functional language before, every single one of these components has to have one and only one return value. So if you've also been wondering why a lot of the time you will do something like db set, and then you'll hit enter, at the end of this, and then it'll add this let underscore. This is because otherwise the dbSet function returns the object that you just set in your data store. And so if you don't want to return that, you have to do it as a side effect on the right-hand side of the let underscore. Okay, so now that we have this coming in, we can see that we have our full request body here. We have an author, a body, tags, and a title. And so we know that we want to do our slug is our title slugified. So we can do request.body.title. And you can see here, it's really helping me out. A problem I had building CRUD applications and other tools is you make one typo and then nothing works and you don't know why. This will pull out all the fields that you have available to you, and then we can just slugify this. You can see I wrote, oh no, I used Python here too. And if you are coming from a language that doesn't have pipes, what I just did here is when you do request.body.title, and then if you pipe into slugify, it's basically the equivalent of, let's do that way too. Slug. If I wrote string slugify first, it would take one parameter, which is a string, and then I could do request.body.title. And so this would have the exact same output using curl. I just prefer the pipeline. It's a little bit neater. Okay, so now we're going to dbSet. We're going to do basically exactly what we did before. Title, body, title, body, body. Oh, that's funny. Tags, request.body.tags. I think that'll work. I guess we're going to find out. Author, request.body.author. And slug. Okay, and so now we should have an endpoint where we can curl and post these into the data store. What I'm going to do, rather than going back to curl, this is what the rerun button comes in handy for, is I'm going to rerun for this trace. So we'll rerun that, and that returns. And so this works. And so now if we go back to our all blog posts, we now have 2, making CRUD apps in dark and using curl. All right, so now that's 2 pieces of our CRUD application. You can see it's nice that all fits here on the screen. Get rid of a couple of our old rebels. Check in on the chat. If a user forgot to put in the title, wait, I can show you. Say I go back over here, I do the same thing. I'm sorry, my key repeat rate is so slow. Everyone makes fun of me for this. I've never bothered to change it. What's going to happen is this isn't going to work. So we're going to get back that the program was invalid. And the reason for this is if we go here, we then don't have a title to slugify. And so we get an error because it wasn't called with anything. It was called with nothing. And so this actually comes up as a request a lot. We would like to be able to have incoming and outgoing types. We actually just added types to user-generated functions. So you can now have return types for your functions. But if you want to do logic coming in, you would want to make sure that the logic exists. So what we can do is we could actually write logic to check that, where we would say like, okay, does the body coming in have these things? And if it does not have these things, send back instead an error. I'm not going to write that yet, but that's what you would do effectively. Or the alternative would be you could decide to handle the logic the other way, where you could say if they don't give me a title, give them a default title based on the first 6 words of the body or something like that. I can use the REPL. How would paging work in get all? Get all is not particularly performant. It just gives you back literally everything. So definitely at some point, you probably don't want to be using get all. It depends on the application. If you wanted to get many, you could use get many instead, and then use get many to get chunks of things if you had like a list of all of the keys. I believe there is a just get keys, db get keys. Yeah, db keys. So what you could do is you could say get the list of keys, and then you could do a list map, and then you could do however, I guess you would like, then you would take the first 10, and then you could list map for those 10, db get many. Oh, I feel as though this is something that comes up a fair amount. We only allow you to pipe into the first parameter of a function. There isn't anything for currying, which is sometimes really annoying. But basically what you would do if you wanted to get many is you would get the set of keys, take some set of the subset of the set of keys, get many by keys, and then put those back together into the results at the end if you wanted to have some sort of pagination that way. The V1 and V2 active function names are that each function is versioned independently. So apparently this is the second version of our slugify function. I'm trying to remember, we found a bug in it recently. I think it was that it was still allowing a special character that we didn't want to allow in slugs, or it wasn't allowing a character we did want to allow in slugs. There was something that was really strangely wrong with it. And so when we release a new version, if you're using an old version of a function, you're still able to access it. So for instance, some of my tooling for adding users to Dark, I should go and upgrade this, is still using some of the HTTP client library functions from V1, and we're on the 5th version of the HTTP client library now. But this is so you can go through and decide to only update one function. And so like db get v2 is a v2. I can show the HTTP client ones that are v5. So these are all v5 now. This gives you, the ability to upgrade them individually without having to go through the entire thing. Cool. Okay, now that we have those, I'm just going to toss a couple more blog posts in. These won't be very accurate. Connecting to GCP, which is what we talked about last week. You're also welcome. Like, this is a public post endpoint. If you want to post to it, that's fine. Cool. Okay, so now we have 3. Let's look at those. Great. And now let's do an update to one of them. And I guess this can also show a little bit of the logic. So let's do a patch endpoint. Patch post / slug. I think this, it will work if you just use a post endpoint, but I believe this is technically when one would use patch. And same thing, we can copy as curl, although I think it's just going to be a patch instead. Sorry. I promise I will turn up my QRP rate right after this. I don't usually type such long things into curl. Cool. No route matches. Yeah. Oh. Well, there you go. That's another thing. Interesting. So I get back the no route matches, even though I made this route in advance. And the reason I get back no route matches is that I managed to type poach instead of patch, which is another thing that having live values is handy for. Now we'll wait for me to arrow all the way to the left again. What did I do? Okay, you know what? We're going to do it this way. And I guess, yeah. I can't remember what one of them was. Okay, sorry. Title. I guess we'll just get, we'll just change the tags, and we'll change the tags to be Walkthrough demo, CRUD, walkthrough, demo, CRUD, backend, tutorial, add tutorial to our list. Okay, I may give up on that for now. You can see here now in this one where I have my dummy request, I also have the fact that the slug is incomplete. Oh, you know what I could do instead? Here, we'll just change this. Oop. Okay. Problem solved. I'll get rid of these. Another thing I will note, since it's come up a few times recently for people who are getting started, if you have something in your deleted section, you will not get a 404 for it. And so that is something to keep in mind if you feel like your 404s aren't appearing. If you're trying to work this way while you're doing it, that is probably why. Okay, so now we have this coming in. It did unfortunately not give us the slug. Yes, it gave us the slug at colon slug. I guess I can go back up to that one. At this point, we're mostly doing fairly similar things to what we've done so far, and you're getting a lot of watching me type into curl. But if you have other questions about things that are helpful for building CRUD applications, feel free to start asking those too. Using curl. Cool. Okay. Yes, finally. Okay, so here we go. Now we have one that actually has a slug. So we can see that that is, and then we can do a db-git on our slug from our blog posts and see if that exists. Okay, cool. The last thing that's important for building CRUD applications that you're going to need in this case is if you want to check if something exists or not, so you can see if you're updating and which pieces you are updating. So in this case, we can see that we do already have this slug, and right now it's just giving us back this object, and it's put it on the error rail, so we're able to use it. But what we can decide to do instead is we can take it off of the error rail. The error rail basically handles two special types. For data store functions, it handles the just nothing type, which is did you get something back or did you not get something back? And for external HTTP calls, it has a result, an OK type, the result type, which is OK, which is an OK response, or error, which is an error response. And so when you're first writing something, if you don't want to be thinking about that, you just want it to be working. What it does is it pulls them all off, and so it'll just run and it'll stop executing and put it over there if it doesn't work. But if you take it off the rail, you can see here, now instead of having just the object, I have a just object. And if I say try to get something that doesn't exist, I get back a nothing. If you want to see the error case on the rail, there you go. It shows that you didn't get anything back, but it just gives you an error rail nothing here. So let's take it back off. Okay. And let's go back to what this was before, which was using curl. Cool. Okay. And so now what you can do is you can match on this. So let's say results existing post. And so then we can match existing post. And so this is a way we can have patterns that we're working on. So if we get back just post, we want to return post. And if we get back nothing, post does not yet exist. Okay, so now what's going to happen is if we were to curl to this, we will get a different response depending on if the blog post exists or not. We'll either get back our post or we will get back post does not exist yet. So let's go back over to curl. And so if we do this, we'll get back our post, which is the one that exists, not what we just said. And if we do something else, cow, post does not exist yet. And so this is very similar to what Maxime was asking before about if, say, the user doesn't provide a title, you could use the same similar logical flow to be able to do that. So now that we have that, what we could do instead is we could, if we get a post back, we could decide to just update the field in the post that has changed. So say someone just gives us a slug and something new, we could update just that piece. One thing I will say is the DB set functionality. You have to use every value. Like I couldn't just say title request title and update only the title. I have to update every single field. And so what I would want to do is I would want to use the request value for, say, we want just the title. And then author could be existing post dot, post. That's a good thing to note. So existing post has the just, which you can see here on the left as I'm typing. But since I've made just post as my pattern, post will work. So post.author, title, post, body, post.body, tags, post.tags, and key, slug, and table blog posts. Obviously, I would want to pull this out specifically for what is being sent to me. So I would want to say, okay, if you are sending me just a new title, I will only update the title. This is just assuming the title is the thing that's going to change. But now if I go rerun this again, not for cow. I still don't remember what that slug is. I'm going to get it eventually. Especially this is the thing I keep doing. We can see that I've now changed my title to be connecting to GCP instead of using curl. Although my slug is still my existing slug, so it's going to be a little bit confusing, but you definitely do actually see that on people's blogs sometimes. And so the key thing to remember when you are updating a field is you have to send the entire object, and so you have to figure out which of the values from the new post that you want to use and which from the old one. Yes, so if you want to migrate, yes, this is great. Let's actually just do this so you can see. So we have our blog posts now. You can see that it says it's blog posts v0. Eventually, there will be data stores. I am loath to say eventually there will be data stores at this point because I feel like I've been saying it for 2 years because it turns out to never be the thing that's at the top of people's list. But what people typically do is they'll do one that is blog posts and then blog posts v1. Title, body, tags, list of strings, author, what else might you have for a blog post? Blurb. So what I would do is I would first get all of the blog posts from the existing one. And I would do this in a REPL. Yeah. So I'd get them all, and then I would, I think I don't want them with keys. I think I just want them plain. And then I would want to, list map. And then for each value, I would do a DB set, and the value would be the value, and the key would be val.title. I mentioned this last week. If you want to pipe a specific part of a function and the pipe isn't going to the right place, if you select just the chunk you want to pipe, that will work. Slugify and then blog posts v1. And so this logic will take all of the blog posts we had and move them into the new data store. And then in this one, we'll also need to add the new field. And so our new key is going to be our blurb. Right. And our new value is going to be empty. There's an empty string. Yeah. Okay. So you can see now that what's going to happen is we're going to move over all of our existing blog posts into our blog post v1 when I run this. Fingers crossed. And so now our blog post v1 has all of our existing things with the title. And then what we would want to do would be, yeah. So then what we could do if we wanted to make sure that everything was working and we didn't want to just do it live all at once for our existing endpoints, what we could do is we could use the feature flags. So same command palette. If you haven't used the command palette before, sometimes I find people haven't found it yet. It is Control / or Option X. I think there might be one other hotkey, but usually between those two, one works for every international keyboard. And so if you want to add a feature flag, you can then say what to do, and then you can write the new logic. So in this case, I would write the exact same logic. Ooh, what did I do? Oh man, that's the coolest bug I found in a very long time. Hard refreshing. It might. Okay, well this is exciting. So thank you all for helping with that, finding that. We have a blog post coming out next week that's about another very interesting bug like this. If any of you ran into it, it was a pretty specific one where for some reason your canvas didn't know where handlers were, so it was very hard to navigate around them. People are apparently hitting things, so that's cool. You can see I'm seeing the 404s come up. The 404s are definitely most useful while you're developing. Once you get to the point where you're operating and you have a bunch of users, it stops being as helpful. It mostly just ends up being people typoing things in your URLs. Okay, pretending that worked. I will do it on a different one. Let's do it on this one. Flag. What I would do is then I would write my condition, and then I would say db get all with keys, blog post v1. And then I could decide at some point to merge all of these feature flags in once I am convinced that they are working effectively. But yes, eventually real data store migrations that happen automatically with a migration script instead of this system would be much preferable. Oh yes, you can also use dict merge. That's a great idea. Cool. And then for writing tests, you have a couple options. It depends on kind of what you're trying to do. We have a new doc on writing tests that people can look at too. We've been trying to add more docs. So if there's a doc you're looking for that doesn't exist yet, let us know. We actually add a few more every single week. So you can either, if you're testing while you're writing and you just want to see like, is the thing doing what I want? You can use a REPL. Another thing that I've seen people do for testing is if you extract more of your code into small reusable functions, what you can do is then write another function that is the test version of that function, and then have a function that aggregates them all into a test suite. I think James was the user who came up with that, which was a really good idea. But say like I want to test, I don't know, number. I can write this function, which is add 5. I feel like I always end up adding 5 when I do this. And then I could write another function that is test add 5 test. And then I could call add 5 with 6, and I would for instance. And then I could go to a REPL and call add 5 test, and my test passes. That's obviously a very boring example of that, but you get the idea. And I would probably do it like this so it's easier to see. And then you could say have a test suite, and then it would call add 5 test and whatever other tests you want to have. And then you could say, once you run them all, you could do some alerting. So like say emit emit warning to error handling worker, else pass. So what this would do is if this test came back with fail, it would emit to a background worker, and then you could write logic to say, send you a text message or a Slack message or something. We can make it fail. So now when we run our test suite, what's going to happen here? I returned warning, and you can see now I get a 404 with my error handling worker, and it has said warning, and so now I could say Twilio send text and send myself a text message or whatever else I wanted to do. There is not yet a way to add images. My recommendation, if you want to have images, we just did a walkthrough of this last week, I think, maybe the week before, is that you can use just a really simple cloud storage bucket, either S3 or from GCP. In the future, we would like to be able to do that, but right now our HTTP library does not support binary types. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? We have oh, someone sent me a post from Postman. Hello, post from Postman. Where did it go? There we go. Yeah. I don't think we got any other blog posts though. No. Okay. Are there any other questions about making CRUD applications? Sorry that it's hard to write curl. Maybe next time I will use Postman. Good idea, person who sent that. N+1 issue. Yes. So this depends on how fast you want to go and how sure you want to be. So if you just want to be incrementing something in your data store, you can do it. It's not like we wouldn't recommend it. Like a lot of people, the first thing they'll try to build is like, oh, like just a guest book of when people hit this endpoint, add one to a value in a data store. The problem is like you might make the call and get back the response of the old value, and so you might occasionally lose one. We have a similar thing. Actually, if any of you want these, we can generate invite codes that can be used more than one time, so you don't have to manually invite everyone. And for those codes, they technically, since the whole system was built in dark, could be redeemed more times than they're supposed to be able to be redeemed if people manage to do it in exactly the right order. So as long as it is, you don't need a very small resolution guarantee, you could do that. So say, I guess an easy way to do this one. And then I don't really know why I would need a data store for this, but it's fine. DB get all, I guess. REPL. That's a good point. If you are using a unique key, you do have to run that before you can run your DB set function. So we currently have 0 visits. List, I guess we'll just get list head. Cool. So we had 0 visitors, and then let new +1, and then DB set visits. There's probably a cleaner way to do this. Oh yeah, that's why you want to. So now I believe every time we open this, did I set it manually to 1? Yeah, let's just do it. List. You get the idea. Oh, I was answering the wrong question anyway. Okay, how do you render static pages? I'm not going to get too much into static pages because that is a whole topic. I believe there is an SPA video that is up on this channel. You can watch about it. I'm happy to run through it again at some point. There is this static assets section down here, and if you click on it, it sends you to this document. And so basically you install a CLI and then you are able to upload any assets that you want, and then you'll be able to see them. Let me think. I think April 5th might have static assets. No. 7th? No. But this will walk you through the entire process of uploading your static assets so you can have them. Oh, I see. Okay, so for the case of you have the authors and then you have to make a DB call for each author, I believe there's probably a query many. Let's look. There's not query many, there's get many. I don't think there's a way to do that efficiently. There's certainly not one off the top of my head, but let me think about it and figure out if there's a way that would be a good way to do authors connected to their blog posts. Usually what I will end up doing is specifically structuring the tables such that I won't need to do things like that. So I'll often design the API first and then go back and design the data store to support the API. This one I went data store first just because it was such a simple example. And then source control. What you have right now is you have a full undo redo stack on every single one of these. So if I come over here and go Command C, you can see like I go back character by character, and then I get rid of the generate key function, and then it comes back, and so forth. The other thing you have, obviously, other than this weird and fascinating bug we found, is the ability to use feature flags. Unfortunately, there isn't UI yet for like rolling back and forward through your sets of feature flags, but over time that will be what version control is more like. Cool. Unless we get any more questions, I will stop us for this morning. We do this pretty much every Friday. I'm happy to do it on days other than Friday too. I'm excited to be on YouTube now instead of just using Zoom meetings. So I hope you all subscribe, and then you'll get notified for other topics we do. And if you ever have topic requests, just let me know. And thank you again, whoever had the tip about OBS. That was great. See y'all later.